For over 90% of human history, we had no idea what caused pregnancy. Not a vague idea. Zero idea. Our ancestors had sex constantly. Babies kept appearing, and for tens of thousands of years, almost nobody connected the two. Some cultures believed women got pregnant from the moon. Others blamed spirits walking past at the wrong moment. One tribe insisted babies came from eating a specific kind of fish. So, today we're answering the question nobody asks out loud. How did humans actually figure out where babies come from? And the answer is way weirder and way later than you'd think. To understand why this took so long, you have to understand something about early human thinking. Cause and effect only works when the effect happens right after the cause. You touch fire, you get burned instantly. Easy lesson. But pregnancy doesn't work that way. Sex happens. Then, nothing for weeks. Often nothing for months, since early cycles made timing nearly impossible to track. By the time a woman visibly showed signs of pregnancy, the act that caused it could be months in the past, with dozens of other sexual encounters happening in between. Add to that, pregnancy doesn't follow every act of sex. Most of the time, nothing happens at all, so even attentive observers were working with a confusing, inconsistent pattern stretched across an enormous and untrackable time delay. If you didn't have calendars, didn't have a concept of a 9-month cycle, and couldn't write anything down, this connection was almost impossible to make through observation alone. This is exactly why so many early cultures looked for other explanations instead. Here's where it gets fascinating, because the alternative theories weren't random, they were logical, given what people could actually observe. In parts of ancient Australia, some Aboriginal groups believed spirit children already existed in the land, waiting in sacred sites, and a woman became pregnant when one of these spirits entered her body, sometimes while she walked near a particular rock or water hole. Sex was seen as something that opened the way, not something that caused the child directly. In ancient Egypt, fertility was tied closely to the Nile itself. The flooding of the river, which brought life to the land each year, was mirrored in beliefs about the body as a vessel that needed to be filled by divine or natural forces, with gods like Hathor and Bez invoked specifically for conception and childbirth. The ancient Greeks had a theory that sounds almost scientific on the surface, but was completely wrong. Many believed the man provided the entire seed of the child, fully formed in miniature, and the woman's body was simply the soil it grew in. Aristotle himself argued that women contributed only the material, not the actual life source, of the baby. It's called the preformationist idea, and it stuck around for centuries. Meanwhile, in various agricultural societies, since humans had already mastered breeding animals and crops by selecting which male and female to pair, there's actually strong reason to believe that farmers and herders figured out the reproductive link long before it became common knowledge in their wider culture. That's the twist. Someone, somewhere, almost certainly knew the truth, thousands of years before it became common belief. But it didn't spread evenly because there was no science communication, no internet, no way to confirm or correct ideas across regions. Knowledge that was obvious to a shepherd in one valley might be completely unknown to a farmer 2 valleys over. This is the part most people get wrong. They assume cavemen were just clueless forever, until science arrived and explained everything. But the real turning point likely wasn't a lab, it was the farm. Once humans began domesticating animals around 10,000 years ago, they needed predictable results. If you owned goats, you needed more goats. And you'd quickly notice, keep a male away from the females and no babies arrive. Bring him back, and within a predictable window, you get offspring. This is observable, repeatable, and most importantly, controllable. Unlike human pregnancy, where you can't isolate variables easily in daily life, herders could literally run the experiment themselves, again and again, until the pattern became undeniable. Many historians now believe this is where the real breakthrough happened, not through philosophy or mysticism, but through farming and animal husbandry, where cause and effect were finally close enough together to observe clearly. And once people understood it in animals, it was only a matter of time before they applied the same logic to themselves. Here's the uncomfortable part. Even after people understood the biological mechanism, that understanding didn't always overpower the old beliefs. In many cultures, knowing the mechanism and accepting the mechanism were two completely different things. Spiritual and religious explanations were often more useful to society than the biological one. They explained morality, lineage, the soul, and social order, things plain biology doesn't address. So instead of one belief replacing the other, they often coexisted. A community could understand, on a basic biological level, why pregnancy happened, while still believing a spirit or God was the deeper, true cause behind it. Biology explained the mechanism, religion explained the meaning. This is actually really similar to how some people today understand evolution intellectually, but still hold separate spiritual beliefs about the origin of life. The two systems running in parallel, rather than one erasing the other. It wasn't until detailed anatomical study, beginning seriously in the 1600s and 1700s, with the discovery of human egg cells and eventually sperm cells under early microscopes, that the full biological picture solidified in a way that could be demonstrated, not just inferred. Think about that. Microscopic sperm cells weren't even observed by humans until the 1670s. The full picture, egg, sperm, fertilization, wasn't understood with real precision until the 1800s. That means for the overwhelming majority of human existence, nobody on Earth knew, with certainty, exactly how a human being was created. What this story really reveals isn't just about reproduction. It's about how fragile human knowledge is when there's no way to record, test, and share it across generations and across the world. We assume our ancestors were less intelligent because they didn't know something we consider obvious. But the truth is, they were working with the same brains we have, facing a genuinely hard scientific problem, a long, inconsistent delay between cause and effect, no written language for most of that span, and no shared method for testing ideas against reality. It wasn't a lack of intelligence, it was a lack of tools, time, and connection. And it's worth sitting with that, because it means most of human history was spent not knowing where we actually come from. The most basic fact about ourselves was, for most of our existence, a mystery. So next time you assume something is obvious, remember, the origin of every human life on Earth was one of the biggest mysteries our species ever faced, and we only solved it a few hundred years ago. If this blew your mind, subscribe, because next time, we're covering the ancient belief that eclipses were a dragon eating the sun, and what people did to stop it.